Welcome once again to SFF180 Horror. On today's episode, an expedition to Antarctica encounters an inexplicable, malevolent force that seems to be luring each of them one by one to their deaths in the frozen wasteland, in all the white spaces. That's the book I'm reviewing. Hello again, everyone. Thomas here, your host as always. Thank you so much for joining me. Great God, this is an awful place, said British explorer Robert Falcon Scott on his disastrous 1912 expedition to the South Pole. And Ali Wilkes has one of her characters say something almost identical in her absorbing alt history horror debut, All the White Spaces. If you're gonna write a horror story set in Antarctica, you pretty much have me at hello. And this isn't just because, like anyone of taste and refinement, I have an enduring love of John Carpenter's The Thing. I've been a South Pole fanboy since I was a teenager, thanks not only to Carpenter's film, but the Masterpiece Theater miniseries The Last Place on Earth, about the race to the pole in 1912 between Scott and Norway's Roald Amundsen. From there, I read Roland Huntford's original book, The Last Place on Earth, which remains my absolute favorite work of nonfiction history to this day. I also devoured other books about the last great era of polar exploration, including Ernest Shackleton's own memoir, South, and The Worst Journey in the World, a first-hand account by one of Scott's own men, aptly cherry-garrard. So speaking as an Antarctic geek, how well does All the White Spaces work? Not half bad, if I do say so, sure. It has its share of debut novel hiccups, the most obvious of which is overlength, but mostly this combination of high seas adventure, survival horror, and coming-of-age story manages to hit its marks. Horror readers hoping for the kind of in-your-face shocks of The Thing, or At the Mountains of Madness, or even Dan Simmons' The Terror might feel let down. The horror here is a cold, slow burn. Possibly a bit too slow, but it's a good thing that we're not getting just another creature feature, nor another imitative "oh no, who can I trust" story. The book does deliver without pulling a bait and switch or collapsing into sheer silliness. It's 1920 in an alternate history timeline in which neither Shackleton nor, presumably, Scott or Amundsen existed, and the deep Antarctic remains unexplored and the pole undiscovered. The Great War has happened, however, and Joe Morgan's two older brothers, Rufus and Francis, went off to fight and are not coming home. Joe decides to honor their memory by sneaking off, with the help of working-class friend and surviving veteran of the trenches, Harry Cooper, and fulfilling the brothers' dream of joining the Antarctic expedition led by polar hero James Randall. Now, Randall's fame is on the wane, as the societal trauma of the Great War has sapped the public's interest in the romance of exploration. Randall is also leaving for the South dangerously late in the season, but Harry easily buys his passage while Joe stows away. To the age-old trope of a young girl disguising herself as a boy and running away from home, Wilkes adds the element of a young trans man coming into his true identity. Joe has never been just a tomboy and has always chafed at, if not outright resented, the way the world is offered up to young men as an endless pageant of a heroic adventure, while social norms require young women to be proper ladies and homebodies at all times. It isn't until running away, getting a haircut, and dressing as Jonathan that he finally feels as if he's become the person he always should have been. The first third of the book is some absolutely smashing high seas adventure, very old-fashioned in tone, with situations going from bad to worse for Randall and his crew as their ship, the Fortitude, makes its way south. Everything about the expedition and its voyage feels completely real. Jonathan is discovered, but soon accepted by Randall and the other hardened old soldiers on board, in sharp contrast to Tarlington, the expedition's scientific officer, barely out of his teens himself, and whose conscientious objector status in the war has earned him the mistrust and derision of the other men. I'm fine with the choice Wilkes has made regarding Jonathan's character and identity, but it does lead to some unaddressed issues in the narrative. For instance, while Harry helps cover for Jonathan by loaning an extra shaving kit that he pretends to use, what is Jonathan doing about periods? On a months-long sea voyage, it's going to be an issue, But Wilkes never mentions it, perhaps out of a desire to make Jonathan's identity one ingredient of the story, but not the entire center of it. But little details like these do matter. In her YA historical fantasy Walk on Earth a Stranger, in which a teen girl joins a westward wagon train disguised as a boy, Ray Carson makes a point of addressing how her heroine keeps her cycle a secret. Anyway, I'm probably spending too long discussing this, but that's critique for you. Most of you are interested in how All the White Spaces works as horror. While I have to say that the book's approach won't be to everyone's taste, I admired how skillfully Wilkes walks a tightrope, revealing just enough while still leaving room for the reader to decide whether we're dealing with an actual haunted continent, something in the men's minds, maybe a combination of all those things, or some completely unique kind of malevolent force altogether. The Fortitude travels south under the shadow of alarming news about a previous German expedition that has been missing for 2 years. Once our crew finds the Germans' old huts, absolutely deserted, with the frozen bodies of their dogs still in the kennels, we know bad things are going to happen, and happen they do. All I will say about the story's supernatural horror elements is that this book did something very like what I was hoping Dead Silence would do. A big problem is that the book takes too long to get to the good stuff. The midsection needed serious tightening. But once we get to the final scenes, where Wilkes spares us nothing in depicting the sheer misery of these men clinging to life in the unforgiving darkness of Antarctic winter, the story will absolutely have you frozen in your seat. And that is all I have time for on this episode of SFF180. Remember the most important thing. These are reviews. You are not going to always agree with me, but if you enjoyed watching, please hit that like button, share the video far and wide with all of your SFF reading friends, and above all, please subscribe if you have not yet done so. That is how the channel grows. You can also support the channel at my TeePublic store, and I do have a Patreon. But at the present time, I'm requesting that if you are in a money donating mood, don't donate to me right now. Find some kind of relief organization, either the Red Cross, you can find many of these online, to help the people of Ukraine in the current horrible situation that they are facing. Thank you very much for all of that. I do want to thank my patrons for their additional support. I use their money to pay Matt Olson, my wonderfully gifted channel artist, for all the beautiful thumbnails and things that he does for me. So that is greatly appreciated. I want to thank the rest of you guys for being the very best viewers on all of booktube, and until I see all of you next time, stay safe and healthy, especially those of you over there. Stay warm, and happy reading.